Hey, come on in. Yeah, no worries. We're just doing an interview. Feel free to come on in. Were you here for anything particular?
No, I was actually looking for some sage and stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah, right over here to the right.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no. Come on in. You can go right through here.
Sorry.
Yeah. There's a lot of spiritual energy down there because I'm from the valley, technically. Uh, and we talked about this, I talked about this with Tito and a few others, people who I know who live down there. It's a different vibe. Even though, yeah, it's hot and you get things like that. But spiritually, when you're on like the border, especially, we've noticed that it's very different. Folk magic, like Mexican folk magic, it's where it started, if you think about it from that perspective.
This is Alexis Arredondo, spiritualist, healer, occultist, shop owner, and much more. You might recognize him, or his voice at least, from the award-winning Austin-based paranormal podcast, The Night Owl True Ghost Stories podcast, hosted by Stephen Bellew. I have had the pleasure of working alongside the Night Owl crew at some of their incredible live events, and even some investigations. I always gravitate to Alexis at these events as he gives off an immensely calming energy, but of course there's not a lot of downtime during these occasions, so I was excited to visit him at his shop, City Alchemist, in Austin, and get to know him a little better. Find out what got him started on this strange journey. My name is Adam, and this is Houston Strange.
I grew up in a small town not too far from the border, about an hour away, where there's nothing to do. So you would literally either do two things. You'd either go out and party, or you go do something not party related. And usually that was like me and my friends, looking for haunted houses, haunted buildings, things like that, or going to the old cemeteries. But there was always the stories of the local brujas, the local witches, the local healers, and what are they doing behind closed doors, and are they actually, yes, exactly. So a lot of that was already happening as well. So I think that there's just a different vibration in those towns, especially the border towns, and people see and view things differently there. Whereas maybe like around here, where there's certain magical practices, right? In Mexican, especially Mexican American culture, it's just ingrained. People would laugh because they were like, "Oh, did you grow up with these practices?" And I'm like, I did not grow up with anybody teaching me how to do these things, but I would see them consistently. I would see my mom making sure that every bed had a rosary on the corner to keep the bed protected. I would see my grandmother hanging bottles, full of water in the trees to keep mosquitoes away, she would say. But my uncle was like, that wasn't for mosquitoes, that was for spirits, So things like that, grew up with that, and there's a lot of that ingrained in the culture in that area. So yeah, I grew up in a small town in South Texas, and we have stories of people like Don Pedrito Jaramillo, a very famous healer. We actually have a statue of him in our altar there. We had stories of brujas and all kinds of things, witches. But it wasn't until I was like in junior high school, or like literally going from elementary school to junior high school, that I realized that these stories were real. It was always kind of just make believe, And when I got to junior high school, I went to the section where the ghost stories and stories about witches were, and instead I found books on actual witchcraft or actual witches. I remember finding this one book about witches and talking about Alexanders and Sybil Leek and all these very famous witches of the 60s and 70s. And I realized, oh, this isn't just make-believe. This is real. You can actually practice this. So bought my first set of tarot cards, started learning witchcraft from, Scott Cunningham and all these Wiccan authors and things like that. So I started learning that, these practices were real. It wasn't just make-believe, which I guess as a kid and in my core, I was like, I know this is real, but nobody ever spoke about it being real. It was just legends, So when I finally did start, practicing, I kind of had started finding people that were very like-minded who also were interested in witchcraft and things like that. And then I met my buddy Chuck. And Chuck was the guy that everybody knew because he was like the one who listened to metal and wore all the concert t-shirts and had like the backwards cap with like the little horn thingy sticking out. You know what I'm talking about. So we became really good friends because he was really into witchcraft, but he was mostly into the darker stuff, right? So he liked Anselm LaVey, Aleister Crowley, all those fun names, Kenneth Anger, all those things. When we started hanging out, we started reading a lot of Aleister Crowley, and then he got a copy of a paperback book that we all know called the Necronomicon. A very infamous book that many people believe was made up. A lot of people believe that Lovecraft wrote the Necronomicon, and there's all kinds of speculation that it was like Aleister Crowley wrote it and all these people wrote it. But nobody knows where it comes from. So we decided that we wanted to start trying to work Necronomicon. Now, Necronomicon is insane. You have to abstain from meat for so many days and all kinds, just like the Gewisha and all those things. And we were trying our best, but we're kids in like junior high and high school. I think we were like in 8th grade or this, maybe possibly, this would have been in high school. Yes, we were in high school. So anyway, one day, we used to do all of our rituals and ceremonies over in this behind this house that was like this little brushland. We don't have forest where I grew up. It's all brushland, which we call monte, right? So it's very low trees. They don't get any higher than maybe like 7 or 8 feet. And there's just very sparse, lots of snakes and all kinds of crazy critters out there. But in the back of his house, kind of in the back corner of the area, there was an old train cart that was like kind of broken in half. I don't know why it was thrown there. And we used to go and do all our rituals and stuff there because back in like the 80s, it was when all the cool kids used to hang out and drink, and like there was like upside down crosses and stuff there, So we went there to do this ceremony called the Conjuration of the Watcher, and then the Conjuration of the Fire God. So the Conjuration of the Watcher is supposed to be like this spirit that's in the woods that is supposed to be like a protector. So we did the conjuration, nothing happened. So we're like, whatever. So then we got to do the Conjuration of the Fire God. Now to do that, you have to build a fire. So we're grabbing as much like dry brush and stuff that we can get and start building this tiny little fire that's like pitiful, We don't know what we're doing. We're like throwing like lamp oil and stuff on it, trying to keep it on. And it's literally like this big. It's very small. And it's not producing like hardly any heat. So we're like, whatever, we're doing our best. And we start kneeling over this little paperback book in our hands and start reciting this conjuration. And it's like, Spirit of the Earth, remember, and Spirit of the Fire, remember, and all this stuff, right? And as we're reciting it, we're starting to notice that like the fire is getting a little bit higher. And well, it's fine, it's dry brush, so every once in a while it just gets hotter and higher. But then it's getting like really high. And now, so we're like bent over like this, and it's like out of our peripheral. So it's pretty tall now. And we're sweating because it's so hot. It's like we're sweating and we're really close. We're kind of scooting away just because it's getting so hot. Then we get to the end, and the whole area is lit up with this fire. And we're thinking like something's happening. So we're real scared. We're a little freaked out. And we don't know what to do. And so I'm like, his name was Chuck. I called him Carlos. I was like, Carlos, what do we do? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, he's like, what do you think we should do? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, we're kind of freaked out. And in my mind's eye, all I could think was like, there was a man made of fire, because it looked like legs. Like it looked like something was standing in the fire. But in my mind, I could think he was just like looking down at us like, fucking amateurs, just like, come on. I didn't know what else to do, so I started grabbing dirt and just started throwing it on the fire. And he took a cue from me. He starts throwing dirt, and then the fire gets smaller and smaller and smaller and just goes out. And so we're just like breathing heavily, we're sweating, and just like we're just like soaked, And then at that exact moment, we can hear his parents calling for us. And we're like, oh, we're in trouble, because we're supposed to be at his house. We're supposed to leave. So we're like, oh, we're in trouble. So we like run through this brushland. Now the brushland itself, like I said, it's very sparse, but we start seeing things through the brush. And the best way I could describe it is like coyote eyes. Like those, like that cat's eyes sometimes do that thing, but they like kind of shine, but they're everywhere. So it's different if it's like one or two, because there are coyotes out there, but this is like everywhere you look, there's just eyes. And we're like, and I was like, are you seeing this? He's like, just run. So we're just like running through as much as we can. So then we get to his house, and his parents aren't there, because they have like this open garage type thing that's like open on both sides, and there's nobody there. And so we're like, there's nobody here. And so he's like, well, should we go back? And I'm like, I'm a little scared. So I'm like, I don't know. And then right at that moment, his parents' truck turned, and he's thinking like, oh, they went to go look for us, like we're in trouble. And they get out, and we're found out, like, we're done. And they're like, hey, how's it going? And we're like, we're good. And they're like, why are y'all sweating? And we're like, we look around, there's literally a basketball on the ground, and he has got a basketball net. We're like, oh, we were playing basketball. Totally unbelievable, by the way. I don't think I've ever played basketball in my life. And he was not a sports person. They're like, oh, we're playing basketball. And they bought it, and they were like, oh, okay. So we were just, I think I was staying the night at his place there. And we were just talking about like how weird that was. And did you see those eyes? And like, that must have been the watcher. Like, that's what that was. And like, from then on, anytime we would go to that place at night, we kept seeing those eyes. Maybe not as much as we saw that night, but they would still be around. So we left a lot of things unopened, if you will, or unended.
This story is so layered. The skeptic argument, as always, feels like the easiest one. These kids spooked themselves, the eyes that they saw were in fact just coyotes, and the ritual is just from a silly little fictional book. But if that's the case, then who did they hear calling them if it wasn't Chuck's parents? I bought a copy of the Necronomicon because I was curious after hearing Alexis's story. For the record, I do believe that it's purely a work of fiction, and on the back it says, H.P. Lovecraft himself denied the book's existence, but the dreaded Necronomicon has finally surfaced. Written in Damascus in the 8th century AD by Abdul al-Hazred, the accursed volume is filled with myths and rituals that have survived the darkest days of magic and occultism. Long forgotten formulae for evoking incredible things, beings and monsters into physical appearance. If I had gotten this book a few years ago, I would have lapped it up, and I do still think it's fun to have. But what really struck me was that Alexis and Chuck performed this conjuration of the Watcher from a fictional book, and something still happened. Was this due to the belief that they had themselves? Was this their own fear manifesting? Or was it something else? Something older. Alexis spoke about growing up in the valley, and the word that came to mind when he was trying to describe the energy down there was raw, unfiltered by cities and concrete. Not to say that the area is lacking modern conveniences or anything like that, but it's a little easier to see how the world might have been a few hundred years ago. It reminded me of a drive I took a couple of years ago through the desert. I had just met up with a friend in Grand Junction and was on my way to Moab. My friend had been experiencing some extremely bizarre activity on her property.
It was the summer of 2024, I believe. I was just doing a normal routine, taking my dogs out in the backyard to go for a potty break and to get their yayas out. And I hear my Aussie cattle dog Bandit start to go absolutely nuts at a fence. And I thought, oh crap, he's fence fighting with our neighbor's dog, because they have their version of a bandit, but it's a husky. And they like to fence fight, and it's broken a couple of panels of our fence and caused all sorts of issues. So I ran out there trying to stop it. And Bandit is very, very sweet. He's very loving, too loving to where he comes off as being pushy. But he was damn near trying to run up the fence to get at whatever he was barking at. And it was kind of trippy, because I first, point my attention to my dog, who's doing something he's not supposed to be doing. And my other little female corgi mix is going with him too and trying to jump up to the fence, which is kind of comedic once you think about it, because she is little. But what I didn't prepare for was this shape that was darker than how it was at night. Like, you could definitely discern a line between this shape and the desert behind us, like the nighttime behind us. It's a little hard to explain, but you can make a discernible shape of what this was. And I say it and this because I couldn't really tell any facial features on it. But it had a face, and it was thin and just very odd looking. It had very long fingers or tendrils or claws. I don't know. But all I could see was this thing kind of like craning itself over the fence. and just looking at my dog. And it, for a split second there, kind of like cocked its head like it was trying to understand something about the dog. And I grew up in the hood in California and Hawaii, so that's never left from me. I did not allow myself to feel fear at that moment in time and was just pissed off at my dog and just screamed, Bandit, get in the house. Leia, get in the house. And this thing kind of like pointed its attention. Like I could tell it was looking at me, which was the weirdest thing ever because it had no discernible facial features, like I said. But I could tell it was gazing at me or looking directly at me because it kind of like popped its head and neck in a way where you could tell it was just looking at you, paying attention to you. And it just stayed there and froze. And Bandit just kind of looked at me and booked it up the stairs onto our deck. And the back door was open out to the deck and went into the house. And Leia followed suit. Not too long after that, we started experiencing weird things going on in the house. Like, my husband is a veteran. He's a Marine Corps veteran, and he served in Iraq. And he has 2 TBIs from explosions and IED attacks. So sometimes his short-term memory is a little funky, and I have to remind him where things are a lot of the time, and it's just life, but we deal with it, and we deal with it really well, and he's graceful at dealing with it. But normally he'll put certain things in certain spots, kind of like how you would if you had ADHD. After that incident with whatever the hell it was in the backyard, things started to go missing. I would see the object there, and then I would leave into another room, and next thing I know, I would be looking for that specific object I needed to give to him, and poof, like just gone. And I would find it in a very odd spot in the house, like downstairs in the back corner of a room or in our office on top of the desk. And none of us had put it anywhere. None of us had touched it. We both had seen it in that one spot. I'm not one to put something down and be like, oh, I forgot where I put it, and then be like, oh, that's where it is. I'm not one to forget those type of things. Occurrences like that were just a little like odd and a little too on the nose. And it started getting so bad, and both of us started having really bad nightmares, that my cousin and I are practicing Wiccans. And so we had to do a bit of a banishing ceremony for whatever was starting to act stupid in the house. And then we salted the corners of my lot, and I reached out to a friend, and he came through and picked up iron railroad spikes. And a couple of times we had seen the thing again, but it was towards the back lot behind our property.
So initially, after these different cleansing rituals, the activity that Domina was experiencing in her house and on her property seemed to die down. That was as much of the story as I had heard when we met up that lovely day in Grand Junction. Unbeknownst to me, the story didn't end there. Now, I had to cut this down for the sake of the episode, but I'm going to upload Domina's full story to Patreon. You'll be able to find that at patreon.com/Houston Strange. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss that. But the main reason that I even reached out to Domina is because Domina's story was the first thing that came to mind as Alexis was relaying his story of the fire god and the watcher. Maybe I'm overthinking this, or maybe I'm making connections that aren't really there. Let me know what you think. But I think that image that Alexis had in his head of something standing over them disapprovingly might actually be closer to what really happened that night. Not the fire god or the watcher, but something very real. Something from the land, maybe. And everything else that they experienced after was meant to scare them. To stop them from messing around like this again. The story didn't stop there, however.
So then shortly after that, I was getting up in the morning to get ready, go to class or whatever, go to school. The way my parents' house was set up is like our bedrooms were all here on the left side of the house. And way on the other side of the house is the kitchen. And we had a bathroom, and my parents had their own bathroom. So I got up, I was taking my shower, and I was the kind of person, I was a night owl when I was a kid. So when I had to get up early in the morning, I literally had maybe like 5 hours of sleep. It's the way I've always been, but I was always usually like an early riser, except for school. School, never. So I use the shower, and I'm like really groggy. And then I'm like, out of the shower, I open the door because it's really steamy. And then I'm like, I think I was like licking and putting like gel in my hair or something because it was the 90s. Putting gel in my hair. And at that moment, I saw what looked like somebody peeked in to the bathroom because we have this big giant mirror. And I thought, oh, that must be my mom. So I look in the reflection. And as I'm looking in the reflection, in my peripheral, I can see in the doorway that there's nobody there. But in the reflection, I can see a face. And the best way I could describe it is it looked like a woman with long, kind of stringy hair, really bloated and like rotting, purple, like just bad, like almost like an axe victim is the best way to describe it. It was really intense. And I just remembered like, I was like, I'm seeing things, you know, or it must have been my mom. So I was like, Mom, and she didn't answer. So I look in the bedroom. My dad's in the shower because I can hear him in there, and my mom's not there. My brother's still asleep, and I can hear my mom. She's in the kitchen on the other side of the house. So there's nobody that could have been there. So I was like, that's a little freaky. But the only thing I could think of is that it had to have been from whatever we were messing around with an Necronomicon, because we were. Some people say they're demonic entities, whatever. Not long after that, I get a message from my grandmother that there's a lady in town who's a curandera, she's a healer, and she's also a medium, and she can read, and they actually called her a prophet because she can foretell the future. That's what they said. And so she's going from church to church, and they do like a ceremony where they like bless you with holy oil, and then they do. She looks at you and she tells you what she sees, that kind of thing. She was going to go to another town nearby called Realitos, really small little town with a tiny little church, it's literally called Church of the Wilderness. It's in the middle of like the brushland, you know. So we went to go check it out. It was me, my cousin Siboney, my cousin Aaron. I think it was just us three, and I think my uncle took us. So we went, and they do like a normal mass, you know, sit, stand, all that thing. And then they call you up one by one. She has your arms held out like this, and she anoints your hands and she anoints your head with a holy oil, and she tells you something about yourself. So like my first cousin went up there, and I think she told her like, you're gonna have, you know, children. It's gonna be really hard for you. And she did actually have 2 children that passed, and it was very hard for her. And now she has a son that she's, you know, it's just the life of our whole family right now, really. She looked at my cousin and she said, I see you with the book in your hand, but this is not any book. She said, this is the Bible. She said, you're gonna be a preacher one day. Now that has yet to happen, but who knows, right? So then I go up there, and she puts my hands out. She looks me straight in the eye, and she has this like smirk on her face, but it's a smirk of, it's kind of like almost like a devilish smirk. Like, I know what you've been doing. So she looks me right in the eyes and she says, God is with you. And then as she's, instead of applying the oil like she does everybody else, she starts slapping my hands like this, like back and forth. And as she does, she's like, and you can't get him out. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And after that, no more weird stuff happened. So I figured like that was essentially like a blessing or a cleansing in that case. And so we didn't have any more issues. So I think that she definitely got rid of whatever was around. But it was probably, to me, with the exception of actually meeting a bruja, an actual witch who I saw some crazy stuff with, it was like validation of like, this stuff's real. Whether you think this book is made up or not, if you put intention into it and you psychodrama it, as we like to call it, psychodrama, which is basically putting a ritualistic action to it, it can manifest, and it will in ways that you either want it to or may not want it to. That's why doing things correctly is important, right? Because you can manifest results that you want as opposed to just manifesting weird stuff, you know? So that's got to be probably, to me, one of the greatest experiences with that specifically.
Was this just a lucky close call? I'm leaning towards some sort of serendipitous situation. It sounds almost too good to be true, but having worked with Alexis before and knowing how he operates on a day-to-day basis, I think this entire event was something that would directly steer him onto the path he has taken to become the person he is today. His shop, City Alchemist, is a bustling treasure trove of occult and spiritual tools, a place where people come when they feel like they need help or guidance. This interview took place on a weekday afternoon, so I really thought there would be little to no foot traffic, but I was happily surprised by the amount of people filing in and out. Newcomers looking for something to help cleanse a space, regulars calling in for a tarot reading, and shoppers popping in to pick up a quick couple of things that you wouldn't find at your local grocery store. I wanted to know how this experience helped shape Alexis's journey though.
I think maybe on some level it kind of told or showed me the responsibility of like make sure you if you can invoke it, you should be able to handle it, because if I had not met her and she had not done that working, it could have gotten out of hand. There could have been more of those visitations. There could have been, it starts as, if you look at like the phases of possession, as they say, like oppression, obsession, those types of things. And this could have been like the first move, if you will. So yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to get burned to understand that you don't play with fire. And I think that, people will come to us, for example, the store even, and be like, how should I start? Where should I start? And we're like, well, we can tell you where to start because we made the mistakes. We know what you shouldn't do. And so, for example, people will come to all the time like, I want to work Goetia. I want to call 72 demons and all those things. I'm like, and I always say the same thing. I'm like, work on your protection, work on your banishing rituals then. Because once you have those down and solid and you can do them in your sleep, then you can do anything you want because now you have a protection. You don't have to wear the medallions. It's all in here or it's all up here. I mean, I will say that my healing journey has definitely been an educational one. Because growing up, I thought a healer was somebody who healed someone because they had power. Even though most of the healers I knew of, like curanderos, those types of healers, they usually healed through God or through some kind of thing. It still didn't register that they needed some kind of higher power to do the healing. So I always thought laying on of hands, those types of things, like you have power, you have some kind of ability to heal people. Now, especially now that I work a lot with spiritualism, I've learned that there are what we call spiritual, or I should say, healing mediums, people who are mediums who work with spirit and have those spirits heal. And I think that actually is more so what we as healers are doing, because if you're not doing it that way, you're actually harming yourself. So I'll give it a good example of this. And as a matter of fact, Tito brought this up at a healing class we had on Sunday at the church. Nino Fidencio was a very famous healer from Mexico. They call him El Nino because he was very young looking. And he died very young. We actually have a bust of him there too as well. He died very young. And many people believe because he took on too much of people's illnesses and sicknesses. Now, do I think everybody can do it? I think on some level, yes. But I think some people have a stronger connection to healing spirit. And so they're able to do it a little bit easier. So I'll give you an example, and this is probably the best healing store I know. We used to be in the space next door. This is actually our secondary space, where we moved over here in January. We were in there, and this guy called the store. It was about maybe 10 minutes before the store opened. He said, I'm from Corpus Christi. He's like, my son was in a really bad accident. He lives here in Austin. He's in ICU. They're telling me he's never going to walk again. They're saying that his leg is shattered, like all these horrible things. He's like, I believe in the power of candles. He's like, I've used candles all my life, and they've treated everything from COVID-19 to all these things. So he's like, I'd like to see about coming to get a candle from your store fixed, which is when we add everything to it, we prepare it, we put in the herbs and everything in it. And I said, yeah, come on down, we'll be here. So him and I think it was his girlfriend came, and they were like, what candle should we get? And I said, you mentioned Corpus Christi. I said, where do you get candles from there? And they said Tex-Mex Curios, which is a store I know very well because I went to college there. And I said, oh, well, I know exactly which candle we should get. I said, we need to use the Cruz de Caravaca candle, the Cross of Caravaca, because she wrote a book. The lady who owns that store wrote a book on the Cruz de Caravaca. And it's a really great book. It's all about the history, and it talks about how to use it for healing and all kinds of things. So I said, let's do a Cruce Caravaca candle for your son. And he's like, can you do me a favor, though? He said, I cannot burn it because the hospital doesn't let you burn candles there. So I said, I'll burn it. I'll burn it for you. I'll have burn it at my house. And I said, just give me your number. So as it finishes, I can send you a picture of it and tell you if I see anything weird about it. Because you can read candles, and sometimes they give you certain signs and things like that. Got the candle, dressed it, prepared it. And then before I gave it to them, I had them all come and we all held it and prayed. And I said, remember, more than anything, have faith. This is the main thing that we have to remember, is that faith is a big, big power of this. Because if we have faith in the intercession of spirits, right, then they can actually heal. So we all prayed. I lit the candle there and then took it home. It's not easy to take candles in your car, but I did it. And I had it burning on my stove. I like to keep it on the stove because it's a fireproof place, right? The next day, I didn't go to work because I think I was off, but I got a call from Eric, the co-owner, and Eric's like, that couple called again, and their son walked out of ICU. And I was like, you're kidding? He's like, no. He's like, he's out. He's completely out. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I said, talk about faith, talk about intercession of spirits, you know. I kept the candle going though, because it was like, it needs to burn. And it burned clear, beautifully, you know, it was a perfect burn. So I texted him after it was done, sent him a picture, said, hey, the candle finally went out. It's burnt out completely. It burned very clear. Looks like it was good results. And he messaged me back and he was like, I cannot tell you. He's like, he literally walked out of ICU. They asked to put him in a wheelchair and he said no. He made a full recovery. The doctors couldn't figure out how it happened. He was literally, they were telling me he was never going to walk again, and then he literally walked out of ICU. And he was like, thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you so much. And I said, no. I said, don't thank me. Thank your spirits, thank your guides, thank your guardians, because that's them. That's not me. I'm not doing the healing. I'm not saving your son. It's like you are, your spirits are, your ancestors. They're all culminating their energy together and causing the healing. People who maybe don't see it that way would probably look at that and be like, I am amazing. I can do amazing things. I can heal people and don't think like that. But it's the minute that ego comes in, when you come in with the I did it, I did this, that's when all that goes away. And I teach that to my students a lot. Like, you can't do things for the purpose of the ego. And I think it was the Bhagavad Gita that says it best, where it says, do not let the fruit of your actions be the reason for your actions. So I said, with healing, with the spirituality in general, spiritualism, whatever the practice may be, you got to leave yourself out of it. And everybody's like, well, but if I'm doing magic, aren't I like bettering myself? I said, exactly, you're bettering yourself. You're not doing it so that you can be like, look at me, I'm the most powerful magician in the world. You're doing it because you're aligning everything with your spirit, with yourself, so that you can now understand how to work and connect to the universe on a completely different level. But that's the tricky part, because as we start to grow and receive things or learn things, that we can do things, and we start to think, I can do them. I always tell people, like, things like phenomena, being able to see spirits, hear spirits, feel spirits, whatever. A lot of that to me is byproduct of the work, right? And yeah, there's some people that are natural at it, like Sarah and people like that, who can see spirits. But I can guarantee you, if somebody like Sarah was like, I'm going to start charging an arm and a leg, like thousands of dollars to connect to your ancestors and tell you this and that, over time, that gift might not be as strong anymore, because it becomes about like me and my money and my this, you know, and the more that happens, more becomes a problem. You know, if you want to be a good spiritual worker and not work a normal 9 to 5, find yourself a witch shop, you know what I mean? But, and I will tell you this, it's a lot of hard work. You know, people think like, oh man, y'all, you know, must be rolling the money. I'm like, no, first off, no, we're very good with our prices, and then we don't pay ourselves a lot of money. We do this for the love of our community, for the love of spirit. We don't do this so that we're making, you know, bank.
I don't know whether I believe in miracles or not. I don't really know what I believe about anything at this point, to be honest. The more work I do with Houston Strange, the more I feel myself opening up and closing off to certain things almost constantly. What I do know is that people can appear to make seemingly miraculous recoveries all the time. My wife's family member was suffering from an illness for almost a year, and when the time finally came for surgery, he was given the all clear when the doctors were doing their final checks just the day before. The lighting of candles in prayer or ritual reaches across so many belief systems that when I initially learned about the Latino practices, I didn't even really bat an eyelash, because in Ireland, where I'm from, it's an extremely common practice, especially among the older generations. It's even a bit of a running joke now to say my granny's got a candle lighting for me. I've personally received really nice dressed candles from friends, and I've burned them as instructed by those friends because it felt like the right thing to do. And this kind of calls back to Alexis and Chuck's story earlier. Is the intent and belief of the individual enough to manifest the result that we see? Or is it something bigger? Spirit, as Alexis calls it. I don't know that I'll ever have an answer for this, but I do know that I'll keep asking the questions and seeking, probably until I run out of time. Before I left City Alchemist that day, Alexis had another interesting little story for me that had just taken place not long before. A story that I really hope we'll find out more about the next time I get a chance to have a chat with him and his lovely partner Tito. Maybe that'll be something for the Patreon.
This actually happened to Tito, my partner. But I think it's a good story, and maybe if I can get him. No, he's crazy busy. So when we were moving, because I told you that we moved 6 blocks from here, we used to live way out east over by the Tesla factory. It was really far. Coming back over here every day, having events here at night, and then driving like 30 minutes out, it was horrible. So whenever we decided to move, we're like, we need to get somewhere closer to the shop. And we found this really cute little house 6 blocks from here, 1925, 100 years old, cute little house in a really cute little neighborhood. And we're like, this is great. This is a really cool place. But there was another house not too far from it, also had a really cool vibe, very weird. Every room had a different floor. Every room had a closet, like every room. You know, it was the craziest thing. You could tell it had been like a house that like added a room, added a room, added a room. But they were both around the same price. And this other one, Tito really liked it. I really liked the other one. When we finally decided which one we wanted, we went with the one that was closer, the 6 blocks away. And Tito had decided, because he was like, I want that one. That's the one I want the most. And I said, okay, you know what? I think you're right. It's nice. It's close to the shop. So that night, Tito went to bed and he kind of projected into the house. We had actually put in an offer on the house, and we had put in we went a little higher because there was already another previous offer. So he was like, oh man, I hope we get it. I was like, I hope we do too, but somebody already put in an offer, so we'll see. So he projected into that space, and while he was there, he was kind of looking around, and he went to this one room, which is now our library, because he was like, oh, it seems so cool. We'll put the library books here, and we'll put the shelves here, and yada, yada, yada. And then as he's doing that, he sees something, and he looks, and there's a woman. And he said the way he described her is like she was like old school Mexican style with like wearing the veil like they would do in the old churches. And she kind of got scared when she saw him, and he got scared when she saw her. So they kind of scared each other. And he just like immediately went back to his body, basically. So he tells me in the morning, he's like, I saw the spirit. There's a spirit in the house. And I said, well, talk to her. I said, talk to her, because if you tell her, hey, we're coming in and we're spiritual people and we're going to take care of the house as much as we can and all those other things, maybe we'll get the house. So he's like, you're right. We should do that. So he talked to her, was like, hey, we're wanting to take care of the place. We're wanting to make sure the house is taken care of. And then literally, like right after he did that, we get a call from our realtor who's like, y'all got it. And not only did we get it, but because we had put in for more money a month, and we got it for the normal amount. So we were like, whoa, that's crazy. And I'm not going to say how much we pay rent, but I will say like for a house in Austin, it's pretty good. So then when we moved in, of course, we're doing our normal things. We're cleaning houses. We're clearing everything, clearing energy out, whatever. We're cleaning the house, but we're having a lot of trouble keeping the house clean. Like it almost felt like there was a lot of energy that was off in the house. It was really weird. It's kind of like, when you clean the house, but it's just like, it just doesn't feel clean. Like it doesn't feel organized. There was a lot of weird, very stagnant type of feeling. So we're thinking like, oh, well, maybe it's just because it's an older house, or, maybe there's stuff in the attic we're not aware of, and there's no access to the attic for some reason. It's in an old house, So we're like, whatever. Well, there's this old washer and dryer in the back. So the way the house is set up, it's like you have to go outside the house, and there's a door that's connected to the house, but it's not connected from the inside. And that's like the washroom. And it's got a cement platform, and then it's like a wooden platform that goes up about a foot, which is kind of weird, but we're like, whatever, it's an old house. Then on the left side, there's the washer and dryer, and there's nothing on the right side. But we notice on the floor, there's these really weird hinges. So I tried to like lift it up, nothing happened. So I'm thinking like, oh, they, cheap thing. They try to build a platform. They're like, how do we keep this together? I'll put some hinges on it. That's what I'm thinking. So then we try to use washer dryer, it doesn't work. And we had just moved on. I was like, we got to wash clothes. And we had a washer dryer at our old house, which we were trying to figure out, what are we going to do with that? Like put it in storage? What, we just bought them, So I contact the leasing agent or the agency or whatever. And I'm like, hey, the washer dryer's not working. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll try to see if we can replace them for you. Might take some time. And I'm like, well, I have one. If you want, we could just put ours in. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. They were like, take them out, put them, in the front yard, we'll come pick them up. So we took them out and we stuffed them over to the side. We hadn't brought ours yet because they were still at the old house. And so I was like, well, now that this platform is free, let's see if we can open it up now. So I try to lift it, nothing. And then he was kind of looking at it. He goes, I think it opens from this side. And he like grabs it and opens it. And there's a hidden basement. And of course, we're like, what? In Texas, it was very surreal. It's still one of those moments when I go back and think about it, I'm like, it almost doesn't make any sense that it was there. So we go down there, and it's full of junk. Like there's wrappers, old books, there's an old Xbox box down there. It's just junk. There's old sinks and all kinds of stuff. It's very small. It's like an 8x8. It's more of a cellar than a basement, but it's old. You can tell it's been there probably since they built the house. We're like, well, that explains why the house felt like stagnant or off. Like there's literally a whole room of the house that's full of junk. So then that night, the same night that we found this thing, that night, we start to notice that like we're getting a little bit of anxiety. I started to get really bad anxiety. And then Tito started getting really bad anxiety. And my dog, Buster, who never has any anxiety, he started getting a lot of anxiety. Like literally getting up in the middle of the night, walking back and forth and back and forth. And it's a newer house, but we'd been there a few days already. He was fine, but he just kind of having this weird reaction. So I get up in the middle of the night to figure out what's going on with him. And I'm like, Buster, what's going on? And I look at him, and he's just staring down the hallway. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, he's never done that. Like, he's never been the kind of dog that responds to something, but he was looking at something. And I was like, there's something down there. So whatever we did, when we went down there, we like released something. So we had to basically go down, not that day, but a few days later, clean the whole thing out, clear the whole thing out, literally spiritually clear and cleanse the whole thing out. And then we were able to finally like have peace. Yeah. But even now, like, it's not a very usable space. It's basically just a hole down there because it's so damp and there's no way to keep up with it. We'd have to like invest in a lot of money, and we're renting it. So, even like when we were like showing like our friends and our family, they were like, don't go down there. And we were like, we're too late. We already did, because but it was the beginning of a horror film, basically. When Tito really focused on the energy down there, he said he saw a completely different entity. He saw what he could basically describe as like Sumara from The Ring, like, or is it The Grudge? I think it's The Grudge. Yeah. The hair down and kind of like all decrepit. Like he felt like it was that energy. So he was like, no, we're not having this in the house. And he made sure that it was cleared out. And even now, even though we don't use it for anything specifically, we clear it out spiritually every once in a while. But like I actually put a camera down there to see if I could capture anything. And there have been a few times where it's like kind of weird, like lights here and there. But the last I checked, it's literally just filled with spider webs. Like some spider literally made, like I have a video of the spider like starting, and then like now it's just like you can't even see past it.
Like I said, I've worked with Alexis before and Tito too, and I've seen these guys in some really spooky situations. I've also seen how they can clue into certain places and pick up on things. So this is something that I'm really hoping that they investigate a little bit further. Although from personal experience, I know that there's a big difference between being on site and having strange stuff happen and having strange stuff going on in your own home. So I totally understand if they don't want to push it. I really feel like Alexis's story could open the door for some very interesting opinions. So please let me know what you think in the comments below, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who have had similar experiences messing around with something that they didn't fully understand as a kid. Kind of reminds me an awful lot of Stephanie's story from a much earlier episode. Go back and check that one out. If you do have any questions for Alexis or myself, I'd love to do a Q&A over on Patreon. I'm thinking about going back through some old episodes and doing a kind of a breakdown and some behind the scenes stuff on there. So if that's something that you're interested in, pop over to Patreon, search Houston Strange, it'll show up. Oh, by the way, I just started a Patreon to help support the channel, so feel free to join for as low as $5 a month and hit me up with any ideas for what you would like to see over there. I have more videos in the pipeline and projects that I'm very excited about, so make sure to go back to the older episodes, give them another listen. Follow me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you have a story that you would like to submit or a location that you would like me to go to, please reach out to me. Email me at houstonstrangepodcast@gmail.com. And of course, stay strange, Houston.